Well, thank you all for being here today. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. So if you want to, just start settling in, and we'll actually start with Jon leading a short arrival practice.
Well, it's wonderful to be together and to celebrate this remarkable moment and the huge outpouring of generosity and care that this group represents. So let's take a moment to really acknowledge kind of arriving, because it's so easy to go on autopilot in front of our laptops, especially if we're spending multiple hours in front of them every day on various Zoom calls. And just maybe even closing our eyes for a moment and settling into the body and inviting the body, even though it's in front of the screen, to rest in some kind of intentional posture that embodies wakefulness, dignity, and the enthusiasm behind all of the remarkable support that and outpouring of love that the pandemic of love and of our being here really represents. So there's a huge kind of intentionality behind it, a huge kind of yes. And also a sense of gratitude for the opportunities that we are occasioned with that allow us to influence the world in ways that are profoundly generous and healing and transformative. And feeling this in the body, feeling the entirety of the body sitting here, breathing. And then how we're also deeply connected with each other. Even if we can't see each other on the screen. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our debt to the, magnanimity and genius and insight of Shelley. And how galvanizing her being is in ways that allow us all to participate at levels of engagement that we might not otherwise have found such illuminating and satisfying avenues to engage in and contribute in whatever ways we can to transforming the suffering in this world. So as we go into the rest of our time together, just maybe forming an intention to feel this presencing, this wakefulness, this awareness in the body, in the moment, and remind ourselves that we can actually carry this through the entirety of our time together. And in fact, the entirety of our moments throughout the day, which actually allows or invites mindfulness to become in some sense, the curriculum of the moment, whatever is unfolding, that the life itself becomes the practice, and our engagement and interactions are held in that kind of embrace in ways that are both profoundly satisfying and also profoundly generous. And Shelley's, I think on Sunday going to be recognized as a CNN heroine. And I think that, I don't know about the other people in that class on Sunday, but this is something we can all probably agree is infinitely appropriate and well-deserved. So seamlessly over to you, Shelley.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly, incredibly humbled. And I want to say that when I thought that we should commemorate this really important marker of 1 million human beings connected since March 14th, I couldn't think of a better way to do it than to have the two people in my life that have informed so much of the work that I do, that have influenced the person that I am, the person I've become. It just, was an immediate thought to ask both of you to be here. And it's interesting because last year around this time, we were together in Parkland, Florida.
Yeah.
And incidentally, also today, I'm on the West Coast, so it's still daytime. And it's the first day still of Hanukkah, which represents light in a time of darkness in the world. So it's all so synchronistic, that it's kind of all converging on the same day. And I wanted to really focus some of our time today to talk about, the journey, the inner journey, right? I mean, we have spent so much time studying and writing and teaching about that inner journey to the self, the familiarization with ourselves, with our minds, with our hearts. And I think that for me, at least, sometimes I find that there is this disconnect between the inner journey and how we show up, or if we show up at all, in the world, in the outer world, outside of ourselves. Because a lot of us, I think, feel like we, we're one person. What can we do? Or we're fractured or broken in some way, or, we are suffering, we have pain. And so we feel like we're not ready to actually show up, or that we have nothing to offer to the world. And I feel like that couldn't be further from the truth, that in order for us to actually really do the inner work, we need to turn more outwardly. We need to have this like integrated and communal journey that, as Dan Siegel actually calls it, the journey of the we, right? The me and the we kind of integrated together. So I wanted to really discuss that. And I'm curious to know if you've also seen this sort of disconnection sometimes with students or peers or in the world. And I guess the question also really is how can we show up in the world, even fractured or broken, and still be of service?
Well, I think sorry, Sharon. You go.
No, that's okay.
I mean, I was going to just immediately respond that we're all broken, we're all fractured, and as Rumi and Leonard Cohen said, that's where the light gets in. So there's a certain way in which when we embrace our woundedness or our sense of inadequacy or whatever it is, and then we see that we're still okay and that we're in the same boat with everybody else, then then our being can actually inform our doing, and even our wounds and our brokenness can inform how we carry ourselves into the world, and our motivation to not just do it to for my own self-aggrandizement or betterment, but because of a profound realization that we're all in the same boat together. And now, since we can, go to the moon and take a picture of the Earth, which happened in 1969, it was the first time that human beings actually got to see the entire Earth sitting in space. And it's like, talk about a we. I mean, it's our one home. We don't have a planet B, so to speak. So taking care of this one means that, meditation is as much about embodied action as it is about stillness, that there are different sides of the same coin, and they inform each other in ways that are profoundly transformative.
Mm.
So I apologize, Sharon, because I
No, no,
really,
no, no, no. I was actually going to add on to your praise of Shelley. So it's nice to
go
sprinkle
for
it throughout,
it. Thank you.
rather than just have like a solid chunk. Um, Also, just to say that since I've been reading the chat, that no, you didn't miss anything. We really did start just like a few seconds before uh, what time it said it would, which was 5 Eastern in the US. And there is a video. I don't know why you can't access one because there is one. So it's so special. All of these occasions when really an international gathering can happen in a way that wasn't even possible when we were trying to be together in a physical space at the same time. And I'm really struck, Shelley, when you said March 14th, because that's the day I came up here to Massachusetts. And is that the day you started Pandemic of Love?
Yeah, around my kitchen table in South Florida.
So here you see the difference between, I was really thinking about myself, and leaving New York City, and Shelley was thinking about the world. And in response to your question, I actually have, of course, seen many people who, through just having a human life or personal growth or introspection or meditation, develop a tremendous sense of compassion and caring, but often have some reluctance or difficulty in manifesting it. Um, there's so often the thought I could never do enough. Whatever I can do is so meager. I can't really change an entire system. And I think that often figures in one's holding back. As you know, I often write about my great love for the Statue of Liberty, which is such an American icon of welcome and compassion. And I have a little one someone just sent me right over there in front of the Buddha. And, my whole life, really, she's been a symbol of that welcome, which is so extraordinary. Like, you have a place here, you can find a place of belonging, you can find a home here, even you that no one else wants. I'll take you. And what I didn't realize until I wrote about her in this recent book is that, I mean, I sort of knew it, but I never really thought about it, is that she's in mid stride. She's actually taking a step. It's not a passive welcome. She's taking action, and she is a woman on the go. And that manifestation is so important and often so difficult. I think what we don't realize is that we are brought back to a place inside of ourselves that's not broken in an act of generosity or caring. And I'll also say, sometimes in an act of receiving. It's very difficult to receive as well as it is to give, to take that action. And sometimes in that connection, in that moment, we're in touch with something intact or whole. If you're receiving, it's something worth receiving. It's your worth as a being. And if you're giving, it's some sense of inner sufficiency or abundance that actually resides, but we're often not in touch with, even if we can't give. everything we would like to in terms of material gifts. And we also, I think, need to remember that giving or action isn't always material, that it's paying attention to somebody, it's thanking somebody, it's appreciating somebody. And whether it's material or this kind of generosity of the spirit, it does fortify us. It gives us that remembrance of feeling whole and complete, even if it's just for a brief time. And so it's a tremendous thing to bring people together, I think, both to give and to receive.
Yeah.
And so March 14th, I was packing. I have an apartment in New York City that I rent, and I have a home here in Barre, Massachusetts, which is next door to the retreat center. I co-founded the Insight Meditation Society, and I had been in New York City just for a few days, and after a lot of travel, and I just started thinking, this feels very strange here. It doesn't feel good here. Maybe I'll go up to Barre, for 2 weeks. And I came up with my snow boots, like
2 weeks.
9 months ago, and they're very useful again now. So, but I'm just amazed that in those early days, Shelly, that you had that kind of instinct of how important it would be for this kind of thing to happen.
Well, thank you for that. I think that, there's the one thing that there's two things that I always tell my son, which I hope he internalizes, even though he's annoyed when I say it to him all the time. But the first is that if you're fortunate enough to be unscathed by a burning or blazing fire, you have two choices. You can either kind of run away and say, "Woof, thank God I got out of that fire," and just sort of, keep running in the other direction. Or you can grab pails of water, buckets of water, and head on back into the blaze to try to save other people. And so I think it's incumbent upon us, as caring human beings. It's really what humanity is about. It's what makes us different, right? Than all other sentient beings, is empathy and caring. And we've all suffered in some way in our life. And so if we're fortunate enough in any type of a fire that's happening and blazing in this world, and there are many, then I think it's our responsibility as human beings to do that. And the second thing that I always say to him is that there are two kinds of people in this world. There's the what ifs and the why nots. And the what ifs are the types of individuals that I remember when I was back in the corporate world used to drive me crazy, because they would whiteboard everything to death, and they would just be stuck in this eternal, hamster wheel of paralysis by analysis, and then nothing would ever get done because they would want it to be perfect. And the why nots were people who kind of would look around and say, why not? I'll just try it. And I can be agile and flexible. And if it doesn't work, then, I'll try to make it work, and I'll figure it out as I go. And so I think kind of like those two philosophies married, and watching and witnessing the surge of fear on my social media feeds, having people text message me and tell me that, I'm really worried. We're at that point in March 14th in Florida, we were not even yet. We were literally like a few days from being sheltered in homes. So because we were the last ones to the party, Florida always is. And so we, and I just thought, gosh, what is an easy and simple way to meet these people's needs? And I realized that a lot of people in our community have enough. And that mutual aid is such a beautiful notion. It's such a beautiful concept that I didn't invent. It's been around for thousands of years. And in fact, I think we sort of have gotten away from it. And these communities of care and safety nets, with the age of industrialization. So it's something that I think really needs to be brought back into our communities, because it does really create equity. And more importantly, which you brought up, Sharon, I think in terms of self-worth, It's the notion that every single human being on this planet has something that they can offer, and that every human being has something that they need. And it doesn't have to be monetary, it could be anything. And so how beautiful is that, that we just kind of like are interwoven all the time, and that we're able to offer and receive and offer and receive. You know, it's like Tonglen in action. Beautiful. That's so great. Yeah, I mean, so I also want to talk a little bit more about this notion of love over fear, because I think people do get paralyzed a lot of times, and evolutionarily speaking, and I'm sure, Jon, you can kind of speak about this in more scientific terms than I can. You know, we freeze. A lot of us just freeze, and I think we don't really like lean in and realize that the only way to get past something is to go through it, right? So maybe you can just talk a little bit about how we can sort of train ourselves or adapt to or cultivate this new default mode, if you will, of leaning into love over fear.
Yeah, and I think that calling it a new default mode is really a very good way to think of it, because we do tend to be wired up to perceive danger everywhere and then to contract in the face of danger. So we can be kind of really diminished by that and encased in a certain kind of resistance to opening. And then on the other hand, as you were saying, there's the potential to sort of recognize interconnectedness and then see the suffering in other people and turn towards or run towards the fire as opposed to run away and merely protect oneself. And these fires are unfolding moment by moment by moment in our own lives. So it's something that you can actually observe in the meditation practice, and then formulate intentions to actually befriend our fear and not let it drive our actions or our behavior. And that becomes like a yoga practice or lifting weights. You're working with your own actual resistance to doing something, and you can learn an enormous amount by seeing how withholding we can be, and then come up with all the what ifs, just as you were saying. And then, actually that's a very beautiful way to formulate a meditation practice. Like, why not this moment just as it is? Why not experience generosity, experience warm-heartedness, experience that sense of wonder and love that really doesn't end at the envelope of the skin. So that we feel for others, and then maybe that's a fleeting second, but maybe we can put the welcome mat out for it and turn it from a fleeting second into an extended moment or minute, where then we would ask ourselves, well, what could I actually do in this moment to express love in the face of my own fear? And then that becomes your yoga practice. You sort of contract and then you stretch, and then you stretch the envelope into that. And obviously everybody on this call has been doing that in spades. And it's a very, very powerful meditation practice. And then the results speak for themselves. So they become the teacher and the teaching, because then we see, oh my God, when I get out of my own way, or when I don't default to my fear, but I default to my love, it's a whole new ballgame. And as many of you know, if you listen to me, I mean, there's something about the arc of my own meditation practice that at a certain point, I mean, I just kind of realized, I mean, I guess I'm a very slow learner, but I finally came to realize that it's not just that I love taking my seat in the morning, say in a disciplined, regular way, which I certainly did and do love, but that taking my seat was itself a radical act of love. and a radical act of sanity, and a radical act of non-doing that actually sets the stage for real doing, for worthy doing, for doing for others than merely sort of, what do I get out of this? And that is so liberating. You know, we talk about mindfulness and it's a liberative practice. That alone is incredibly liberating, because what it liberates us from is our self-centeredness, our self-preoccupation that we've gotten really good at because we practice it all day long. And as soon as you start, say, making your own selfing the object of your meditation practice, and you just notice how many moments where the personal pronouns come up and take over, and the what if scenarios, you know, then life itself not only becomes the meditation practice, but life itself becomes a radical act of love. Mm. And the pandemic, you know, the nightmare that it is, an increasing nightmare with every single day, the nightmare is getting worse. I hope I'm not bumming anybody out by articulating that, because it's just so horrendous. And we need the counterpart to that. We need a pandemic that is one of generosity and caring for others who are less fortunate, less privileged than ourselves. And then that is what the meditation practice is in a certain way. There's no separation from that in the pandemic of love, because the meditation practice is actually infectious. I mean, anybody who's been teaching it, and the three of us have been long enough to realize that, holy cow, people actually take to this. And maybe we should relanguage it so that people actually, you know, are infected by it, that they are actually ignited by a certain kind of passion that's not self-centered anymore, but that's just bigger than self, even though the selfing part doesn't disappear magically. And that in the midst of this kind of suffering on so many different levels, what we really need is what we already have, is the exact counterpart, that kind of natural infectivity when we connect with each other, when we listen, when we feel, when we learn from each other, and then celebrate how beautiful the whole unfolding is, and how much we take it for granted, and then just kind of, if we're not careful, lose decades of our life by trying to get to some better place, and in the process missing the wonder and the beauty and the awe. So we're kind of in this kind of, in a certain way, you could say, conspiracy. You know, we're conspiring together to tilt things in the direction of love being the default mode, you know, rather than mindlessness, rather than fear, rather than heartlessness. And it is a practice. We have to work at it because we're so constrained by habits and the way we were brought up, and frankly, traumas that we may have experienced at various points in our lives that just let us not be so trusting even of our own goodness. Does that square with your own experience as a practitioner, Shelly?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, I think that I'd like to think that I was always like this, but I wasn't. I was definitely, you know, way more self-absorbed in my earlier years, and I do credit a consistent practice over the last 2 decades, thanks to Sharon, of, you know, metta, of practicing every morning. And I've just seen, felt my heart expand to proportions that I never thought that it could expand. And so in a sense, yes, my default mode has really become trying to, like, even when somebody aggravates me, you know, and I'll give you a short example, you know, when you're on a plane and the steward says, there's people that need to get off first, so make sure you don't get up until, you know, when we get to the gate. And lo and behold, what always happens, like everybody gets up as soon as the seatbelt lights goes off. And so this actually happened to me, of course, as I was taxiing into New York. I was with my husband, and he got really aggravated about it because this one gentleman, like, sort of like just, you know, mowed us over. And I'm sure he said something that wasn't quite nice. And my immediate response was, maybe he's just suffering. Maybe he has a sick mother and like he's rushing to see her and he has to, you know, like that was my immediate, which is annoying to people around me that don't think that way. But I actually, I feel like, even when I'm afraid, you know, even when I myself, of course I was afraid in March, still am, of, you know, what could happen. My mother might get sick, somebody I love, my in-laws, you know, you both, you know, are so dear to me, like anybody that I care about, you know, bad things could go wrong. People are dying every single day. And I could choose to focus on that and be paralyzed, or I could choose to focus on individuals that we can save, you know, that we can help, that we can lift, and in doing so, lift ourselves.
Yeah.
Sharon, you're
Yeah, I'll respond. And John, if you can click on the Q&A button, I think there's a question there with a comment at the end for you, and you
Oh,
might.
okay. And just apologies. I mean, I do what I never do, but I'll sort of just confess that I clicked on the chat button, which I never do because I find it splits my attention and I
Yeah.
want to be fully present, but I also want to read what everybody's saying because
Yeah.
we can't see you in this mode. I guess this
Yeah.
is not the mode where we can have like a gallery view with hundreds of people. So I just want to express my sadness, so to speak, about not being able to sort of drink in your faces. And then I'm going to go to the question.
Yeah. Click on the
Okay.
Q&A button.
And
And you know, I was thinking about the role of mindfulness and attention and just wisdom in all of this, because somebody sent me a quotation of me from, I don't know, like 10 years ago, which is always an interesting experience. And something I've been saying for a really long time is that interconnection, the fact that our lives are really intertwined, is it's like that's the reality. And it doesn't take a kind of spiritual perspective to see that, because science shows us that, and economics shows us that, and environmental consciousness certainly shows us that, and even epidemiology shows us that. And I said epidemiology because I have very good friends who are very prominent in the anti-smallpox campaign in India, and I think the anniversary of the eradication of smallpox was yesterday or the day before. And so I've always been interested in epidemiology. So for years, people have said to me, what does that mean? Or why are you talking about that? Or what does that have to do with anything? You know, and here we are. So it's like something that John said made me think of this. Like the pandemic has shown us in a way the terrible face of interconnection. That what happens over there doesn't nicely stay over there. And that what we do, it matters because it too will ripple out. And the beautiful face, the other side of interconnection, is compassion, in a very unforced way, because there is that consciousness of our lives have something to do with one another, that this is just the truth of things. And so it's as natural in a way as breathing out. It's like, okay, here we are. And it's such a relief in a way to understand. I found it that way. I think the example I like the most from my own life is riding in a car with a friend, and we were stuck in this terrible, horrible, awful traffic, complaining bitterly about it the whole time. And then my friend looked at me and said, well, we're the traffic too, you know. And I thought, oh, that's right. And I looked at that prior mind state, which was sort of like, it's my road. You know, I own it. You are interlopers in my way, slowing me down. But when that sense of the center, which was me or us, and the others disappeared, then we were just all traffic. And we had a problem, which definitely needed to be addressed, you know, which was the traffic. Um, and it's such a relief not to feel that kind of separation. But I think attention is the key because we're taught so many myths, we're taught so many lies, really, about who we are and where happiness is to be found and where strength is. And it's only for me, you know, when we become mindful one way or another of what things really feel like and how they really affect us, that we have the chance to make a difference. You know, is vengefulness, as we look at it, really that strong? This sort of endless preoccupation with someone else's actions, you know, endless. I mean, really? You know, how does that feel? Or uh, for many people, you know, the idea of compassion is kind of weak or a little too meek or something like that. But really, like, what about when we look at it? So we have this enormous gift through the possibility of paying attention and seeing for ourselves, you know, where our greatest happiness can lie.
If you think of it as an adventure and as an ongoing experiment, and you're the investigator and life is the laboratory, you know, to pursue the public health and epidemiology angle of it, you know, then in a way it's extremely motivating because it takes you off your center. It's decentering, and it really is um, inviting the we to be recognized as opposed to the me. And you know, I mean, the three of us, I mean, are just kind of like nothing special. It's just that we in some sense represent uh, having looked so deeply into the suffering of the prison of self-centeredness that, you know, we're just doing the best we can. I mean, it's not easy. It's not like, oh, I got that down. There's no me anymore. Oh yeah, well, who's saying that? And who's bragging about it? You know, so very often you have to really watch out because things get more and more subtle around the narratives that we tell ourselves. And that's actually what's technically known as the default mode in neuroscience is like you put people into scanners and say, don't do anything, just lie there, you know, in this cigar-shaped tube that's too small. And what do people do? They default to thinking. And what do they think about? Favorite subject, me. So my future, my past, my shopping list, my to-do list, you know, and then fear and anger and all these things about, and it's all other people who are causing me my fear, my anger, my, and it's like, that's now called the default mode, that this region of the brain that defaults when nothing else is happening to self-centered narratives in time. And of course, we got billions of them, depending on what triggers this, we can have different kinds. And what we're learning by practicing mindfulness is that, and I don't know if the neuroscientists would agree with this, but I'm trying to stretch their envelope here, that maybe over, you know, periods over time, we're slowly uncoupling that default mode from and growing another default mode that's really defaults to no time at all, defaults to no center to self. If there's no center to self, then it's like awareness, because you can't find the center of your own awareness, and you can't even call it yours, and you can't find the boundary of it either. So it extends way beyond the body. So in a sense, when Thich Nhat Hanh or, you know, other teachers talk about interbeing, it's not really a metaphor. It's the actuality that, you know, whether it's mirror neurons or things we haven't even discovered yet about how we're social beings, we're biologically wired to be in touch with each other. And then and yet there's also a tendency to sort of get to group together with what we call like-minded people. And I think we need to work against that, because the question that I'm getting has to do with vaccinations and people who don't believe in vaccinations, and where it's a family problem with a Trump person and a grandchild. And I can't answer it in the question and answer, but take a stab and just to say that we tend to cultivate only familiarity with the people who sound like us, look like us, and talk like us, and agree with us, and we're nodding our head all the time. And we stay away from those people and almost dehumanize them. And it's very easy to do. I mean, but it's not necessarily wise or compassionate to do. And ultimately, we internalize them, and so we become them in a certain way by reacting in that kind of a way. So we need to be able to, again, find what I call orthogonal ways to hold these impossible domains that don't seem to intersect at all, like the people who voted for Trump and the people who, think that the people voted for Trump are like, and the way they think about the people who didn't vote for Trump. So it's like the country is suffering from this as a major disease that is not going to go away on January 20th.
No.
So this is a problem that's where the pandemic of love becomes really important, because the well-being of the nation in some sense depends on the heart and the liver not going to war over how each other looks or thinks, which is kind of what's happening with the body politic here. And then we have the whole planetary challenge. So I think the principles that you've put into play, Shelly, with this pandemic of love, they could be amplified. Why stop at 1 million? Why even stop at 1 billion? There's no real natural limit to this, nor is, just in the same way as there's no natural limit to human awareness. It's not my awareness. It's simply you could say a gift, but it's kind of, we're gifted with this capacity somehow because of the way we are wired up being human. Can we find ways to inhabit it so that we can cross those seemingly impossible divides? And you found one that actually speaks to generosity. I mean, the people who pair up in your pandemic of love to help each other, they don't first say, well, who'd you vote for?
Right. Sometimes.
Say, well,
so I actually posted a story and wrote a story recently in Time. And I think I sent it to you and Sharon as well.
I saw it. Yeah, I did see it.
That's the thing, is that sometimes they do ask, like,
Yeah.
who are you voting for?
And then you connect with the humanity of the person, right? Or reject it. I don't know, but
well, I mean, I think
connect.
I kind of challenge people to think about it in this way of, connecting to the suffering of another being, number one. But secondly, like, if we think about this sort of apocalyptic, which, we're not there yet, but we've been very close in the last year. But when you're like,
look at the 17 attorney generals, pleading the Supreme Court. I mean, we're very close.
Totally. But I think back to even like 9/11, like if the plane hits the building, you're running out of the building's on fire, you, in that moment,
help other people,
the other human being. You don't see the color of their skin, you don't see their religion, you don't see who they voted for, you don't see anything else, but we need to survive and we need to help each other survive. And so in this sense, in this moment in history, in time, I think we need to really kind of lean into that.
Yeah, we're on the one planet and the planet's on fire.
Yes. That's...
I mean, the pandemic is a certain kind of fire. It burns.
Yes.
Global warming is another kind of fire. It burns.
Yeah. Exactly.
There are so many
There are, but there's so the beauty, and I think really the thing that I'm the most proud of are the human connections. People that were able to, on both sides, feel seen and heard, and at a time of disconnection, feel connected, and just the fact that people were able to just remember how to be vulnerable again, And I think that in our vulnerability, that is a strength. That's really the thing that I'm the most proud of, is that people got to step outside of themselves and randomly be paired up with somebody that they probably never would have met, in any other circumstance, because they live in a completely different neighborhood or travel in the same circles, and suddenly you get to walk a mile in somebody's shoes. You get to put the lens on and see the world through their eyes. And I think that's an exercise for all of us, All of us need to step outside of ourselves every day, because that's what, leads us to be more empathetic. And it allows us, I think, to not see those divisions that, that people are talking about, but rather see the good in people, as hard as it may be sometimes, hard as it may be. So, well, we're almost out of time. So Sharon is going to lead us in a closing sit, loving kindness meditation. And, before we do that, and before we sign off, I wanted to thank both of you for the impact that you've had in my life. It's immeasurable. You really are the reason that I'm sitting here today. And I love you both so dearly and so much. And I just want to leave everybody with the thought that, we're each candles, right? You've all heard that metaphor, or that saying that a candle doesn't diminish itself when it lights thousands of other candles. And so if you think about it, if we don't light ourselves on fire, we're just wax and wick. So may you have the courage to light the flame, knowing that it may burn out, but it's better than sitting forever in darkness. I'll pass that to you, Sharon.
Wow, thank you. And I wanted to say, just as a last comment, that the couple of videos that I've seen of people who've been paired up through Pandemic of Love are so filled with joy. And that is a remedy for us and for our hearts in this time where, there's so much anxiety and grief and fear and anger and so many very difficult emotions to bear. And we need to bear them, and be with them in a kinder way toward ourselves. But at the same time, just seeing just the kind of delight, and in people, and finding out about one another, or discovering something about one another, and someday hoping to meet in person, or whatever it was in these two videos. It was just so happy making. And I think that's something we also need to remember is to take in the joy. And so I wanted to lead just a few minutes of loving kindness meditation, which is done many different ways, but one way it's done sometimes is by the silent repetition of certain phrases that are like the offering. It's gift giving to oneself or to others. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. Instead of, for example, with ourselves going through the list of our faults yet again, or somebody else, the corrective, like, you would be happier if you only got a different apartment, or whatever. It's like a freely given gift, just to be able to express that sense of connection. So if you want to sit comfortably, you can close your eyes or not, however you feel most at ease. And really, the phrases are up to you. They're the vehicle for the heart's energy. I use phrases beginning with myself, because we are the first recipient, Like, may I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease, live with ease of heart. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. But you could use any phrases. And remember, it's a gift, it's an offering. If you find your attention wandering, it's okay. You can recognize that. Just come back. And see if someone comes to mind who's helped you, who's maybe helped pick you up when you've fallen down or inspired you from afar, who brings a smile when you think of them. An adult, a child, a pet. Who makes you smile? So if there's someone like that in your life, bring them here. You can get an image of them or say their name to yourself. Get a feeling for their presence and offer phrases of loving kindness to them. And someone you know who's struggling, who's having difficulty right now, bring them here. An affirmation of the fact that our inner work could never be really just for ourselves alone. And offer phrases of loving kindness to them. And then all beings everywhere, all people, all creatures, all those in existence, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes or lift your gaze, and we'll end the meditation.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our donors and our volunteers who show up every day. So much love to you. And why not? Let's go to 1 billion. We'll meet here again to commemorate that.
May not be long, actually. Let's see how long it takes.
And we can meet along the way from time to time too.
Yes, that's true. Very true. Be well. Happy holidays, everyone. Love you all. Love you, Sharon. Love you, Jon. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Well, be well. Bye
Bye.
bye, everybody.